And there's leaflets scattered around everywhere for everybody we've got coming up as well. So if you fancy it, they're all free as well. But yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Just for the video. And if you've not read his book, Robert Evans is from Cheltenham currently.
Yeah. Originally from Surrey.
Yeah. And The Rewilding is your debut novel.
Yeah.
And it just came out last month.
That's right, yeah. So right at the end of the month, kind of submitted it kind of a year ago, and it's come out just before the summer holidays I teach. So it was a really kind of busy time.
Yeah.
Reports were coming out, subject leader reports are going in, class swaps. So it was quite difficult to make sure that my head was kind of in two places at once.
I bet, yeah.
But no, exciting.
That's brilliant. And I've read it and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was brilliant. I'm a big fan of Jurassic Park, and I thought, it sounds like a British Jurassic Park sort of thing, along those kind of lines. And it's brilliant. I love what you do with the different themes, because it's different, very different to Jurassic Park at the same time. How do you pitch the book to people?
I suppose actually I do go down kind of that Jurassic Park line in my head, because I've got Jurassic Park up there as so successful, so great. I'm like, it's a diet Jurassic Park. But it is very much like that. I'd always wanted to write a book that involved kind of prehistoric animals, and I'd kind of thought it'd be better to go with animals that were not so distant in the past. I thought genetically that's more kind of accessible. And I saw, about 15 years ago, I can remember watching a program, and it was really good. And it was all about how they were looking to bring back mammoths.
That's bad.
And
I'm guessing they didn't do it.
Well, I'll get to that in a second.
All right.
So the idea was they find kind of a really well preserved kind of specimen. And what they were hoping to find was a male specimen. And they were going to kind of use the kind of the sperm cells from there.
Yeah.
And the idea was they put it into an Asian elephant, and they keep repeating the process,
okay.
Asian elephant being kind of the closest relative. So I can remember that, watching that at the time. And I suppose that must have stuck in my head, but I thought I won't do mammoths. I'll do, something that can kill someone, because that might put a bit more drama around the place. And so I wrote this. And just by chance, I was teaching my class. We'd finished our reading lesson. We had 10 minutes to spare. So I thought, I'll type something in. We'll research something. We'll look something up. And lo and behold, this article came up on bringing mammoths back. And I didn't realize this, but they have the company that want to bring them back who had an absolutely massive breakthrough.
Oh, right.
Because of stem cell research. And that's what they've used. And it brought up all these ethical debates, but they said, essentially, the bottom line is, they said, within 5 years, we'll have mammoths back.
No way.
They said, we're there. And the person kind of interviewing said, what are you going to do next?
Yeah.
And the scientist responded with, you essentially asking the same question to kind of Neil Armstrong when he landed on the moon: when are you going to Mars? He said, I don't think you quite appreciate what we've just done, how big the breakthrough is. But I've since heard as well they're trying to bring back a cave lion and a cave bear, which were the two animals I chose for my book. So I feel a little bit validated that I was on the right path.
That's awesome.
But I've always wanted to write a book like that. And in terms of kind of pitching it to people, well, if you want something kind of quick, exciting, that's what I've tried to go for. I've not tried to be kind of overly smart. It's meant to be an enjoyable read, something that you pick up, you can get through a lot. But you've always got the story. You can pick the story up and go with it, and that's kind of where I've gone with it. So
I love that you pick up sort of different themes to Jurassic Park as well. So Jurassic Park had a lot of the kind of, you're playing God, so you shouldn't be doing this sort of thing. Whereas there's sort of a more environmental theme.
Yeah, there's more an environmental aspect to it. I suppose in this day and age, there's an awful lot, isn't there? We're looking at climate change, deforestation. I mean, even in this country alone, when you look at the amount of forests we've lost over the last 10,000 years, it's pretty extreme. So there's all sorts of things kind of in there, but I've also gone from the aspect of the main character, Steph, is kind of going through this book, and she's kind of got her own motives and then those motives change, and she's meant to kind of represent kind of a normal person where she's trying to do one thing in life and then something else comes up. And I think for someone say in their mid-20s these days, I think that's quite relatable. The world's changed so much, and it's kind of how she sees things. But because it's going through her, there's things going on around her that she doesn't quite grasp. Like there's a very dark underworld there, and I try to allude to it without going into enough, like loads of detail with it. I don't want the reader to kind of know everything that's going on there, and I don't want to give all my time to that, because I want it kind of going through Steph, and she only sees kind of the surface level, which is what, you know, anybody else would see if they just bump into it by accident. And there's quite a lot going on there. But yeah, I mean, I suppose in that respect, it's quite similar to Jurassic Park, where there was that kind of, you know, two rival companies, differences. I don't give the details, so it kind of leaves a lot to the imagination. Well, who are these people? Where are they? But I thought I quite like that as well, because it leaves me open if I want to go there later. I've not given the game away completely.
And quite often you sometimes see writers who've done lots of research, and they're very keen to tell you all the research that they've done. So they'll put it in regardless. Or Michael Crichton's got a bit of a fetish for technology sometimes. I remember in, is it The Lost World, where he's lots of long descriptions of Jeeps and trucks and that sort of thing.
Yeah, he does go into quite a lot.
Which is brilliant, but
I didn't realise how much research he I mean, obviously he's passed away now, but he there was a book that came out that was written by himself and James Patterson.
Oh, the volcano.
Yes. Have you read it?
Yeah, it's great.
It's great. If you haven't read it, definitely read it. It's and it was his wife. I read about it. His wife essentially found all the research he'd done, and it was extreme. He'd gone to Hawaii, which is where the book was set. He'd done all this research on volcanoes. She said there was videos of him just stood in like the sea up to his knees, just looking at the landscape, trying to work out what would happen if this happened here, if that happened there. And she found the research and basically gave it to James Patterson and trusted him and said, please, can you finish this book? And so he finished it. And but the amount of research was, as you said, huge. And I've based a lot on kind of knowledge I had, also other reading I did. There was a book I read called The Sports Gene, which is fascinating. And kind of that's where I get kind of this idea of kind of trying to make things stronger, where they've got kind of like myostatin, which is an inhibitor, like, so it stops your muscles growing out of proportion. But we've already as humans used it, where we've kind of taken it away from animals, so they do get bigger, they do get stronger. And there's certain animals and this where it just happens naturally, and there's certain people where it happens a bit more naturally than others. So I kind of used that and thought, well, that's also an interesting thing, where Steph's kind of, she's this field biologist, so she does know her stuff, and yet she's looking at these animals going, something's not quite right with some of them, apart from the fact, you know, there's genetic engineering for these animals that shouldn't be here in this modern day. Even the ones that are there, there's something a bit bigger about them, something a bit different. And I quite like that, this idea that there's all sorts of little things going on. People are trying things all the time.
And it probably comes across in the book that she's a field biologist, and the way she talks about animal behavior properly comes across like she knows her stuff. And the way I thought that was one of the really interesting things about the book is the way she's kind of like, it reminded me a bit of iRobot, where a robot goes mad and then the scientists use the three laws to be like, which law is broken here, to figure out why this robot is behaving weirdly or trying to kill people. The way she kind of used her knowledge of current animals to try and figure out what was going wrong with the prehistoric ones, I thought was really good.
I mean, and again, like trying to pick animals that weren't too distant from, you know, in the past, means that she can probably get away with that by going, you know, this is, the plant life might have been reasonably similar. This is what they would have done. This is what animals that are closely related to them do in the modern day. I was actually at a book fair a few weeks ago, and a zoologist started speaking to me, and he was drawn in by the title. So I started asking him about wolves in this country, because I know that had come up, and he said, probably not wolves. He said, the amount of money that would have to go into farming just to protect fences, all these kind of little things I didn't think of. And he said, and of course, people have got so used to being able to just go out on a walk. You want to go for a walk in the countryside, you just go out on a walk. You don't think about anything else. It's all perfectly safe. Whereas he said, obviously, you go to the USA and there might be bears, so you might take some, bear spray. You might anything. You're making people away. He said, so people probably wouldn't tolerate wolves. But he said, lynx, things like that. We're going to bring them back. And
right.
It was quite interesting hearing his kind of like insight into what is actually going to happen.
Yeah.
I suppose times can change, things can change. It'd be interesting.
I loved how the story starts with what you call in the book an animal murder mystery.
Yeah, I suppose there's that element. I wanted something
to it.
Yeah, I wanted something that kind of hooked the reader straight away. And again, Steph's got this her own motives, and that's the thing that brings her there. So yeah, I wasn't sure whether it was a bit too brutal because of the the age of the victim, but and also the way they died. But I thought that's kind of real life. Sometimes those shocking things happen, and it was interesting. I saw I don't know how many of you have read much of Stephen King, and there was a really good interview with him where he said the amount of mail he got after he had a dog killed in one of his books by one of the characters compared to when he ran over a baby in a sleeping bag, he said that was quite scary in itself. Yeah. Because I mean, and I read the book he was talking about, and it's horrible. Yeah. It is horrible. But he said, you've got to get some of these characters and these events, these things happen. So if you're going to write a book like that, you can't shy away from it. You've got to kind of dive in. And again, that's why this book's quite different to what I tend to write, because I tend to shy away from some of those things, I suppose.
One of the things I really enjoyed as a fan of like horror and Jurassic Park is that none of the characters are really safe.
No.
There are characters in there who I really liked, and then horrible death. It's just like, it's nice to have a story where you're not entirely sure who's going to make it to the end. Yeah. Like the new Jurassic Park movies come out and it was brilliant, but you kind of got an idea of who's going to be safe, which isn't much like, in the first film. It's a little bit, in the book at least, it's a bit more anything goes. I was surprised actually, because obviously I'd seen the film years before I read the book. Yeah. And you're right, the number of people that say die in the film, you're still not sure who's dying, but in the book in particular, I was even more surprised because they made it through the film. But yeah, I quite like, I mean, I suppose the most recent thing to have done that really well was Game of Thrones, wasn't it? Yeah, of course, yeah. And I have to admit, I've not read the books yet. I've got the first one on my shelf waiting, but like all of us, there's a whole list of books I'm trying to get through before I get to it. But my friend, he's read them all, and they did that really perfectly, where you've got these characters that just die, and they did that in the TV series really well. And again, I think that's that kind of real life element. You can be really attached to someone, but sometimes that happens, and I wanted that, where that's life. But I know sometimes, and I'm the same, you feel robbed if a character you really like and you've put loads of effort into, in terms of you feel emotionally connected to them, and then they just die and they're just taken away. Sometimes that can be a bit unfair. Again, life. One of the things that I thought was really relevant to current times as well in the book is there's an element of what your super rich fellas are up to, where there's an element of recklessness. Yeah. Which is obviously there in like Jurassic Park as well, but it's updated and it feels a lot more, Elon Musk can do whatever he likes, and there are no consequences for him because, he has all the money in the world. There's so much money, isn't there? I mean, like, you've got Musk and Bezos with their, I suppose, their own modern day space race, haven't they? Who's going to get to Mars? How they're going to do it? It's quite interesting. Read books on Elon Musk. I know, obviously, it's changed probably in the last 2 years, a lot of people's perception of it. But I read a book a few years ago, and it was talking about SpaceX and how economically he runs it. He's always looking for what's the most efficient way to do it, what's the most efficient way.
Then you're hearing about Bezos, who's going, what's it going to cost? What's it going to cost? I'll just throw this money at it to make it work. I'll throw this money at it to make. And again, there's a character in here who's made a lot of money, and that's how all these things start. It's kind of self-indulgent, isn't it? But again, there's the motives. Why are they doing it? Just to see if they can.
Yeah.
But on top of that, who are the people behind the scenes pushing? What are the other influences in their life? And we all have that, where there's people that we like and people we dislike, and then people that can influence us and people that can't influence us. And it doesn't matter how rich you are. There's always that similarity. We're all the same in that respect. Just obviously our ability to act on it might be very, very different. So. Yeah, I quite enjoyed that character that I had in there, and I quite enjoyed actually the characters around him and what made him tick. And I quite enjoyed, again, there's obviously money in this shady dark side as well of the book, and this character that was, I hope, I mean, you've read the book, I hope kind of misled you with the Roger character a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, so I really liked him. I've half based him on a neighbour who, they're nothing the same, obviously. Just an old guy lives, but he's led actually a very interesting life himself. But whenever I thought of what the character looked like and like kind of how he spoke, it was him. And then I thought, oh, wouldn't it be great if he just had this really dark side? But he doesn't think of himself as kind of an evil character or a bad character. He's just, I'm doing this, and I require to do this, this, and this to get this done.
Yeah.
And that's where he kind of came into being. I don't think originally when I started writing it, he was going to go that way. And I sort of kind of write in that way where I just start writing. And in my head, I sort of know what I want to do with the story.
Yeah.
But if a character doesn't go in that direction, they don't go in that direction. And if I have to change a story, I change a story. And if it goes off this way, it goes off that way. And kind of makes it interesting to me that I don't really know where it's going.
Yeah.
But it then makes it harder to tie it all in at the end, to make sure it all ties together enough at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So do you plot everything out in advance and then just sort of go off occasionally?
Do you know what? I don't. But what I do is I've got a notebook, and I always keep a fountain pen with me. I had an English teacher, and he always said, always have a fountain pen. Whatever you do, always have a nice pen. It's worth having. And I've kind of kept that ever since. So I jot things down in my notebook, and it's tiny details when I'm writing something, like sometimes it's hair color, or I might mention they've got like a brother, or they might have a child, but those characters that just aren't really going to show up but might get a mention, I need to remember the name. So those kind of little things I kind of jot down, and every so often I'll put literally just 2 or 3 bullet points ahead of what I think is going to happen. If I've had a good idea and I want to definitely go down that way, I'll do that. Or if there's something that I need to look up. So in there, like, I knew I'd read something before, but I couldn't remember the exact terminology. So I knew I had to look up that thing for the next part to write it. But generally, no, I don't. And I really take my hat off to those people that do, because it must be a mammoth job. Has anyone read the Count of Monte Cristo?
I read a third of it, and I think that was longer than most, like 5 books together. It's like that big, is it?
That was massive. So it took me probably a year to read, and I was reading books in between. And but it is one of my favourite books. But it is, the characters are so intertwined, and the fact he wrote it in the 1800s. In my head, he must have had a corkboard the size of this wall, and I've got like a detective just string everywhere to every character, and I just can't work in that way because it'd be too rigid, I think, for me. So
some writers do say that they hate. I think Stephen King's one of them. He hates the plot because then he's bored. He knows where it's going. So what's the point?
Yeah. I mean,
but you could see that definitely.
Yeah, and the fact that he said that makes me feel more validated. Like, he's right up there as the most successful. So I'm like, if he can do it, then
I love any stories of authors who are disorganized or who don't know what they're doing, or who have terrible first drafts and they have to go back, and because growing up, you have this idea, don't you, of authors just sort of knowing everything, being these geniuses. I remember seeing an interview with Lee Child where he was talking about he's got a gun guy. He wrote his first book, put it out, and it was a success. And then someone sent him a massive email like, you got this gun wrong, you got that gun wrong, you got this gun wrong. And he's like, well, I don't really know anything about guns, so now I'd send my novel over to this guy and he checks all the guns for me. But you have this idea of Lee Child being this, SAS badass type. He knows everything about every rifle. But it's sort of a process with lots of input from...
So I was saying to you earlier, wasn't I? So my brother's friend is a writer, Tom Hindle, and he writes murder mysteries. And the first one he wrote was a Fatal Crossing, and he set it in the 1920s on a ship.
Yeah.
And I can remember asking him after he wrote that one, I said, is your next one also going to be a period one? He said, no. The amount of research I had to do, I don't want to do that again. So he set the other ones a bit more, he set them in the modern day and are far more accessible to him, the places he's been to, or he just went anyway, and it's quite interesting. Whereas I would like to, I'd like to write, there's so many different stories I'd like to write. And I started writing a book based on the Civil War. And I tend to, a lot of my writing tends to have a bit of comedy in. I try not to have it in here. I feel like I've taken most of it out, and I've tried to get into that frame of mind of writing far more seriously, but naturally that's where I want to go. And I set this story. It was basically a group set in a little village called Duckford, and I thought, Duckford's funny because why would a duck need to ford the river, And it was near Oxford, and I have a history degree, and I quite like that kind of time period. And I thought, what I'll have is basically a group of almost kind of vigilantes who are going to fight against the king, not really because they care massively which side wins, but it's just the king's men have gone through there and just ruined things a little bit for them, stolen a few things. They're like, right, they're going to get it. And I got 40,000 words into this story, and I suddenly had this kind of, I suppose, the bad guy character. And I suddenly realised, this guy's amazing. And I've taken 40,000 words to get them doing anything. So I'm like, right, I'd have to completely rewrite this. So I've kind of started rewriting it and stopped rewriting it. And I've kind of moved on to a few different things. But that's maybe the problem with not planning too far. Sometimes something comes up and you suddenly go, oh no. And there was actually interesting, you talked about guns. There was something with a gun in this where a character had a gun, and I thought something comes up like 20, 30,000 words later, and that issue would be solved if they just shot them. All right. But do they still have the gun? I couldn't remember what I'd done with the gun, so I suddenly had to go back, look through, and I can imagine that probably happens more often than people realise, where writer suddenly thinks, that would just be solved with that, but what did I say? But no.
I have that issue at the moment where in my thing, characters are just sort of finding guns and knives here and there and losing them and all this sort of thing, and I have to have a little spreadsheet just to keep track of who's got what in their pockets. It's driving me crazy.
This is it, isn't it? I mean, in the real world, massive inconvenience. People are finding guns and knives everywhere. In a book where characters need to defend themselves and you can do whatever you want, quite convenient when they're just there. But I've had to do, again, I'd like to do the Civil War one because I was researching some of the weapons. I was like, but what weapon would I give who? And in this, it's very much, there's tranquilizers because they don't want to kill every single animal there. They don't want to kill each other. These are valuable animals. If I was doing something in the Civil War, I always had this idea of the English longbow, and obviously it was such a destructive weapon for a good 100, 200 years, and it was faded out. And my understanding is it was faded out because it was cheaper, not because guns were better, but it was far cheaper and far easier to train people to use a musket than it was the years of training to use bows and arrows. And even like when they'd fire the arrows on battlefields. They had to go find the arrows afterwards. Right. They had to make sure that they were fixed as best they can so they didn't run out, because it was such an expensive business. But I like the idea of, when the Civil War was there, having a Welshman live in this village, and when the group first get together and they've got kind of absolute hodgepodge of weapons, he's just going around with an English longbow, and going, you can't just keep going with that. The world's changed. But he's going, I can fire 7 arrows to your 1 bullet every minute.
Oh, that sounds great.
But again, that's that whole weapon conundrum of what do you put where, and you get to have a bit of fun, don't you?
Can I ask how you got started writing? Was the Civil War book your first?
No, do you know what? I've written quite a few things. So I got into reading, I think, quite late. I mean, I was always made to read. My parents were quite good, make sure you read. I can remember being bored one day, like in primary school. It must have been a weekend. My gran had bought me the first 2 Harry Potter books. I'd seen posters around like school, but I had no idea who this person was, just this guy with glasses on the front cover. And I was really bored, lying at home one day, and I just picked up the book and I just read it. And then, I blitzed through the Harry Potter books, and then Prisoner of Azkaban came out. I can remember I think it must have been in year 6. I remember Mrs. Pettinger, like we split for maths. So she was my maths teacher. I can remember her talking to someone going upstairs, and she was like, the Philosopher's Stone was good, Chamber of Secrets, meh. And then she went, Prisoner of Azkaban, this is brilliant. And you kind of get excited about these things. So then I started reading more in secondary school. I've read almost every Bernard Cornwell book there is.
Class. Yeah.
So I blitzed through those kind of things, like historical fiction. And I kind of enjoyed writing little bits. I'd jot things down. And at university, I was unfortunately incredibly lazy.
Right.
Like a lot of people, but unfortunately it was... and then I did my teaching. I did my PGCE, and I was writing script. I was trying to write scripts then.
Yeah.
And so I started writing bits then, and then I can remember just afterwards I tried to write like an hour-long script for this. I suppose it'd be a drama documentary if you saw it on television, and it was based around an oak tree. And I thought, well, if we plant this oak tree, and they live, an English oak can live for so long.
Yeah.
It's so I started. I think I had soldiers coming back from a crusade,
right.
And they planted it by accident, and it kind of grows, and it goes through these different time periods, and just these stories that happen around the tree, because obviously the tree just never moves, but all these things happen around it. And then so I wrote that, and someone said, "Oh, someone's actually written something really similar."
Oh, no.
I've not seen it. I was like, "Oh," but good. Someone else has got that idea. So I started trying to write scripts, and I thought, well, I'll try and start writing kids' books, because I started teaching. But there's certain language and themes that you can't really include in a child's book. And
none of these ones.
None of these ones, and even that I had to thin things out and take certain vocabulary out of it. But I'd say the last 10 years in particular, I've been writing, and I've kind of, when I started, like really starting off, I put kind of some short stories on Amazon, and really? Every so often in the last few years I've done that. If I've had an idea for a character for a short story, I've kind of just put it up there, just just so I don't waste it. It's just doing something, and but in terms of like kind of full length books, the last 5 years I've really tried to improve kind of my craft, kind of looking at little things that I do. Are the sentences too long? Are they too word? And that's what when I first started off, they were really like that. And that's sort of why I wrote this book, to force myself to be faster and more concise with certain sentences. Because it's got to, it's got to have that pace.
Yeah.
So I've been writing kind of since then, and I really enjoy it. I mean, I write because I enjoy it. I've got so many stories I want to write, and they're all different genres, which is not helpful at all if you want to carve out a longer career in writing, unless you become obviously very successful, and then you kind of earn the right to kind of write what you want. And again, I was speaking to it was my brother's stag do about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so I got to speak to Tom Hindle really well, and I was sharing a room with him, and he was he was reading a book that he was kind of contractually obliged to read. And he was saying this. He said this book's really good, but he started talking about he really wants to write a ghost story, and he's obviously started writing it. He's taken it to his editor, and they've gone, maybe do this as a weekend project. You just keep doing this at the weekend. And bear in mind, this is someone he sold, I think, 100,000 paperback copies last year, just of one book. So that's not including the hardback. And they're saying that to him. And he said one of his friends who's with the same agent was basically told the same thing. And so he just wrote this book. He wrote the book anyway.
Yeah.
And then he said to his agent, I've written it. I've I've had it edited. He said, what are we going to do with it? And so the agent basically said to the publisher, look, you didn't want it written, but he's still written everything you want him to. But he's written this book, so either you take it or we're going to go somewhere else. And so the publisher went, all right, we'll take it. And we'll go from there. But it was interesting hearing all of those things. But he gave me advice. He said, try and pick a lane for now. And that's where I've got to thin things down. So I've got in the pipeline, I've got a sequel. I started writing for that, and I've got a few other ideas of where the main character Steph could go with it, and also keeping within the themes of the animals and the things going on in the world. But I wrote a short story around the last 2 years, and I wanted the main character to be just this really horrible, disgusting killer. And I think because I'd read Stephen King, and you get into the mind of this character.
Horrific.
Yeah, he has
Mr. Mercedes.
Exactly.
It's just really hard to turn the page sometimes.
Which is why it's nice to have the other character. And of course, in the short story, you haven't got a lot of time. I think it was only 8,000 words. It's all kind of him.
Yeah.
And I thought, right, well, if I make this into a longer book, I've got to have him, but I've got to have kind of somebody who's going to triumph over him. Otherwise, I think it's going to. I don't think I'd be able to stomach it if he just kind of gets away in the end. But I thought, well, that might be quite good because again, it's kind of that dark. It's quick. It's kind of there's going to be horror. There's all sorts of things going on. And I read the first 1,000 words to my fiance this morning, actually, it was last night, and she said he sounds disgusting. I'm like, good. I'm doing something right then. You're thinking of tiny little details. So he's in his van, and he's part of pest control, and he's going to sort something out. He's on a job, and he's just like eating a sausage roll, and kind of the flakes kind of get stuck in the corner of his mouth and falling down. That happened to all of us. Anyone that tries to eat a sausage roll and can eat it cleanly is some sort of god. But again, like I thought, those tiny details where I want to get better with, make him disgusting. Yeah. But then I thought to myself, I don't want to get too bogged down on all the detail. I want kind of action, things to happen, because obviously that's the exciting thing.
Yeah.
Although I quite like dialogue as well. I mean, I've read quite a lot of Nick Hornby, and he's brilliant at that kind of back and forth between characters, and you know who's talking without him putting a reporting clause in.
Yeah, it's really hard to do that sort of stuff as well.
I mean, I read. I'm reading one of Richard Osman's books at the moment, and but one of his I read about a year ago, and he had a scene where there was a chapter, where there were 5 people talking, or it might even be 6 people talking, and they've obviously split into groups of 3, and they're talking, so they're each having their own conversation, and yet he's written it all interspersed. But he's not said who's talking, and yet you know exactly who's talking because he's done it so well. And I'd love to be able to do that. So I'm trying to kind of get there, but I'll then read through my own work and go, I don't know. I don't know what I did here or why.
It sounds like you're dead conscious of sort of trying to improve yourself as a writer. Constantly. Yeah,
there's little elements where I'm trying to. So again, where I've written things before and they're kind of a bit more lighthearted, or there's humour in, it's easier for me to then write a kind of long-winded sentence because I just kind of get carried away into that kind of thing. So writing this has kind of made me a bit more conscious about that and trying to make something shorter. I mean, I've got a second draft of a murder mystery and I need to work out what to do with this. I've got 2 second drafts of books which I need to work out what to do with. And it's a group of cousins chucked onto a desert island, and it's their grandfather that's kind of sent them there as part of his will. And it's basically everything they want to inherit. They've got to find this pewter model of the Santa Maria for no reason that he finds it interesting. And he's buried it somewhere on the island. And this guy made his money. He was almost like a modern day Indiana Jones, kind of stole riches from other countries that he had no right to. And then it kind of ends, his days of doing that kind of ended when the FBI caught him with a load of silver from the American Civil War and said, "It's great that you found this for us, but I think that's enough for you." But he'd already made money, and kind of so the family do quite well. And it's all these cousins that played together when they were children, but kind of gone off and done their own thing. They're coming back in kind of like mid-20s, but the oldest one's kind of like mid to late 30s. And he was always the leader, kind of took people around and sorted things out. And, somebody dies. And they're going, well, we're the only ones on this island.
Right.
And, she's been murdered. So one of us has done it. Unless there's someone on the island, they're like, is there this convenient kind of somebody else is out there and there's all this going on? But even like the way I have, somebody die, I've gone, that's a stupid. And so somebody dies going to the loo. And I think it sounds stupid, but in reality, I'm going, that's kind of sort of when you're most defenseless because you're not really paying attention to things. And, but also, these are people that shouldn't be on. They're not Bear Grylls. They don't know how to look after themselves and either by themselves. But they're going through that. Some of the men are going through that bravado of, I can do it. I can learn. And one of them, who's kind of very like kind of comic, I suppose, almost the comic relief of the book, is he's got a knife that he bought from a market stall, and he's really pleased with it, really impressed with it. And I was like, it's just you won't use that to open envelopes, don't you? And he's like, no, it's much more than that. And he's always wanting to use it, and he kind of designates himself like the main hunter of the group. But again, because it's comic, it's really easy to go, right, I'm going to really describe this, or how that person's feeling, or what's happening there, or what words can I put in there to make it, I suppose a bit funnier. And then I go, well, why have I done that, rather than just kind of getting to the nitty gritty of this is happening, this is why it's happening. And that's, moving people on a fast pace. But, like I said, my mind's kind of, I've got so many things I want to write about, and they're all different genres. But I'm pleased with this. It's brilliant, honestly. And it's so fast paced. And I read it in like a few nights, which I'm a terribly slow reader. So that's massive for me. I just got through a book recently called, The Lost Cause. Cory Doctorow. I'd never read any of his things before, and it was a shame because obviously it's all subjective, and I thought, he's obviously a good writer, and there's certain bits in this I quite like, but he's been very preachy throughout so many different things, to the point where I don't like the characters at all. I don't want anybody to survive or anything to work out for them. And it kind of doesn't. And then I go, but that's what you wanted, isn't it, Cory? Everything's worked out for you. And I kind of then think to myself, I wonder if that's the same for people reading this book. And I suppose, and this is that kind of subjectivity, isn't it? But I did write it for people that wanted something fast paced. Yeah. Whereas I know certain people that have read it have gone, I wanted more character development. And I was thinking, well, this happens over the space of about 2 days. So I don't really know how much development you're going to get. And that's I mentioned Dan Brown earlier, and I've always quite liked his short chapters. Yeah, I love it. I love it when you get to the end of a chapter and there's like a little question or just a little hook to keep you going to the next one. And if they're short, it's always like, I can do a couple more before I go to sleep. This is it. You kind of go, how long's this chapter? 2 pages. Brilliant. Yeah, exactly. I've read a chapter. If you get into like epic fantasy and it's like, right, this next chapter is 25 pages, I'm just going to leave it for me. I mean, I've got 2 young children. I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. I teach in the day, and then I'll come back, and I'll then have to take over with the children whilst fiance does her own work. And by the time I've got them into bed, they've got ridiculous amounts of stamina. I mean, they were running around the shopping centre earlier, just chasing each other the whole way. And there's certain little things where I was thinking, I'm sure like Louis was in a pushchair, like when he was Amelia's age, and they're just doing their own thing. But it means they don't go to bed. when you want them to, and you're having to fight that battle.
Completely sympathise. I've got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old.
I mean, it's very
by the time you get them to bed, your brain is just melting out your eyeballs.
This is
sometimes.
So, but that's when I try to set myself 500 words. If I can do 500 words, it's just enough for me to kind of get into the flow of something. If I write 500, I might write 600 or 700.
Yeah.
And then I like to write everything down. And then I like to edit. I don't like to write and edit unless I notice something pressing.
Yeah.
And every so often I'll read a section to someone and I'll go, oh no, this needs changing. And
right.
There's part of me that goes, but in my head I was definitely going to write this today. So I can get quite, I suppose, anal about, I must stick to what I said in my head originally and forget everything else, and that'll just have to wait till I go back and find it again months later and realise that mistake hasn't changed. But yeah, it's I wrote that in the same way. It was very much
sort of chip away.
Yeah, and every so often I try and write a larger chunk, like 1,000 words or 1,500 words at a time. But yeah, it's that consistent chipping and trying to do it as often as possible so I don't lose the flow of the story.
Yeah, so you're not sort of having to reread the whole thing again just to get back up to speed.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that's where my little notebook comes in handy, where I've noted things down.
And you've got a very, as a teacher, you've got a very intense job as they go.
Yeah.
You know, if you work in a library and you're in a quiet library, sometimes you can make notes on the side when nobody's looking, but I don't imagine you can do that when you've got 35-year-olds running around.
Yeah, it's getting harder as well. The children are getting more and more demanding. It's funny though, but you kind of get your influence for a lot of the names from the children as well, and then you go, how many? If something happens to a child and it's bad, you kind of get into your head, I can't use that name then, because I feel like that'll come back to me. And then, oddly enough, I thought, for that book I wrote, it said I'd done a second draft of the island kind of murder mystery. I used a lot of family names, and I asked my mum and my sister-in-law to proofread it, and my mum was like, "You can't use that name. Look at what happened to that person." And I was like, "Yeah, but it's not the actual person, is it?" You know, that character is so different to my brother or to my cousin. And they go, yeah, but are they? And I was like, well, I think they are. And then my sister-in-law says, I mean, can you kill your cousin as she goes to the toilet? And I was like, I didn't kill my cousin. I killed someone who had the same name as my cousin. And I didn't even kill them. They're not real.
It's lovely that they're all reading it, at least, even if they are giving you a hard time about
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
No, I mean, it's some family members are probably better readers than others. I don't think my dad's read it yet.
Are they like your beta readers?
Yeah, so I've tried a few. There was somebody that she still works at our school. Actually, she says she proofreads for quite a few people. Actually, just off because she enjoys it.
Yeah.
So she actually did the proofreading for this. And she enjoyed it, but she came back with all the kind of little mistakes that slip through the net. And it's crazy the amount of things that slip through the net, because you write it and there are going to be little mistakes.
Yeah.
Even though when you're writing it, you just don't see the mistake. And sometimes it's you've written the wrong name, or, you've used the wrong pronoun, or you've used a word. You've just stuck two words together and somehow missed that when you were typing. Or you've written something that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And bear in mind that I'd proofread it myself. Like I'd really, spent a long time going over it, making sure that I edited it and changed it and proofread it. And still there was some of those same mistakes going through there. Like, I can't give a good example, but I know there was a sentence she sent to me. She goes, "What do you mean here?" And I read it and I said, "I don't know. No idea." But she was really good, and I've asked her to do a couple of things since, but she's been very busy, unfortunately. But she was really good because she gave me all of those notes.
Yeah.
Whereas I've asked my sister-in-law whether she'd do the same. I said, don't be afraid to write down everything that I've done wrong and just send it to me, because being the lazy person I am, in my head I'm like, great, that'll save me time. If she says which page it's on, I'll go back and I'll change it. but she didn't. She just said, "Oh yeah, I really enjoyed that." I was like, "That's good. That's good."
Yeah, that's hard feedback, isn't it? Because it's like, I can't do much with that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good, but I need you to help me fix this thing.
Yeah, you want them to like encourage them to be horrible to you.
Yeah. You almost, and it's a weird thing to kind of get your head around. Like when I released this, I knew that certain people weren't going to like it, and it's one of those things where you're trying to find your audience, and it's going to be for some people and not for others. A bit like, I didn't like the book I just mentioned, The Lost Cause, but I know other people have loved it, and that's all it is. Whereas I know I've read books in the past where I said, this is brilliant, and I know mates that have read it said, I hate it, and then books they've said, this is amazing. I've gone, yeah, is it though? And they are. If there are enough people out there, it's that subjectivity, isn't it? The writers obviously found their audience and written a really good book for that audience.
Yeah.
And I'm just hoping that, this finds its audience.
Yeah.
And they enjoy it. I mean, that's the main thing. As long as people have enjoyed reading it.
Yeah, because there's no book that is for everyone.
Yeah.
Like even Richard Osman, as brilliant as he is, has probably got a lot of 1-star reviews from people who expected something else, or it's not their cup of tea.
This is it takes, I think, time to find your audience and then build up. And I suppose where I've said I've got loads of things I want to write, if I suddenly had, an audience like that starts to go, well, we like this, we like this, we like, I suppose it starts to shape where you go. You start to write for them. Because at the end of the day, that's, I suppose, what it is. If you're just writing for yourself, you don't necessarily need to get something out there. There's nothing wrong with doing that either, though, I don't think. But when you're writing for people and you're trying to entertain them, and you want them to be entertained, you want them to enjoy it, and that's what it is, isn't it? We pick up a book because we want to, I suppose, escape reality for a little while, or pass the time in a slightly more constructive way than just scrolling on our phones for for hours on end, which is dangerous in this modern day.
And you can see that even like award-winning people who write sort of Booker Prize-winning books, that sort of thing, don't sell an awful lot of books, so they're getting something else out of it. As much as people hate on James Patterson, and we do ourselves, because there's so many of his books, it's so hard to find places for him on the shelf. Like he's brilliant at what he does and sells more than anyone in the world, pretty much.
I mean, I always think one of the best examples is 50 Shades of Grey, where she spent a bit of time, she knew her audience, and nailed it. And yet I tried to read it. I tried to read the first book, and I just couldn't. And in my head, I was like, this isn't well written. I mean, I say that as if like I'm brilliant myself, and someone's going to pick that up and go, what? But actually, maybe it was. Maybe she wrote exactly how she meant to write for that audience. And again, that's the kind of the brilliance of it. And like you said, there's authors that win prizes, and the books are like they're deeply intelligent. Characters are really well intertwined, and the storyline goes off in this way, and there's another story that goes over the top of it, and it gets you thinking. But some people want something that's just fast paced, or they know what they're going. I mean, a bit like I churn through all the Sharp books, and I know what's going to happen. I know he's not going to suddenly get halfway through the book and Sharp's going to be impaled by a French bayonet. He's going to get to the end. He's going to kill the bad guy. Patrick Harper will say something funny. The word bastard will be thrown around, over and over again, and they'll have a good time, and I'll have a good time.
I read a book recently, which is brilliant. It was called Right to Market. By, I think his name's Chris Fox. And he basically says there's no shame in writing what people want to read. And he gives examples of like he himself writes military sci-fi. So he went through the top 50 books on Amazon that are military sci-fi, and he's like, they all basically use the Battlestar Galactica template of you've got your sort of old man renegade general in charge of everything, you've got your young pilot who's a bit scrappy and that sort of thing. And all these books have the exact same templates, but they all do it their own way, and people just sort of they know what they love and will buy what they love and read it and love it, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Well, this is it. I mean, me and my fiance, we often argue over the television, like the few times that we do get a chance to sit down and watch something. And she will want to watch something that I think is deeply depressing, where someone plays a few notes on the piano like every 5 seconds to denote that something bad's happening. And, you know, someone's been murdered. And I quite like murder mysteries at times. And some of the, you know, I feel some are better than others, but she'll just watch anything that's kind of dark and depressing. But as I kind of point out to her, you'll start watching it and then you won't finish it. And then you'll ask me to help you work out what's going on. And I don't want to do that. Whereas then I will, you know, every so often, like something new will come out that's a period drama, or, you know, I see someone, you know, says something set in the 1800s or a certain war. And I'll go, oh, let's watch that. And she'll say the same thing back to me. Oh, you're saying that I watch depressing things, and yet you're wanting to watch lots of people killing themselves. I'm like, oh. That's a fair point, but
yeah. So, how are you finding? Because the book came out last month.
Yes,
which is amazing. How are you finding this sort of marketing, sales end of things? And what are some of the most challenging parts of that? Just because I ask, because we've got a lot of our writers group in here, and there are a lot of people who, like myself, would like to get in self-publishing, but that end of things looks very daunting, like an entirely different job to writing the actual book. Yeah,
it is difficult. I mean, the publisher's been quite good, so they've obviously got in touch with you. They set this up. So I've got a few events coming up. But even when I did my first book fair, it was looking around, seeing, well, what do other people do, and what can I do better? And that sounds, I'm not saying that in a horrible way, but you're kind of going, well, how can I improve? What can I take that they're doing really well and do differently? And sometimes it depends on the book. So I was sharing a table with an author who writes children's books. And she's come to our school a couple of times. And when you look at her numbers, the numbers of books she's selling, you'll go, my goodness, she's doing amazingly. You know, if I sold that much in a year, that'd be fantastic. But that's her whole business. And she says she's just about breaking even. She says in a few years, she's hoping it will then start to generate more money as she's got more books. So she'll go to schools and she'll do a free day of kind of workshops. And then at the end, you know, she'll sell a load of books. And she says she goes to book fairs and things, but, you know, really she sells her books at school. So she goes to the schools and sells them. So she's got that model. Obviously can't do that with this.
No, I think you'd get in trouble.
Exactly. There was another guy who writes horror. And he was saying, so he's been with the same publisher I'm with, and then he's done some things as well by himself. He goes to all kind of the Comic-Cons. He does lots of that, and he says because there doesn't tend to be always a lot of authors that have written horror. So he tends to corner the market. He says he corners the market at these events. And kind of that's the way he goes about it. I'm looking at what can I do online, and I think that's the way to go. You're connected to everyone, and the idea is you can find your audience everywhere. And that's what I'm trying to get to grips with. And also using AI. How can AI help? What can I do with it? And again, I didn't realize this. I was speaking to one of the authors, and she said she's been part of a couple of writers groups and authors groups, and a lot of people were kind of a bit iffy about AI.
I've been on some Facebook groups for self-publishing and stuff, and if you mention AI on some of them, they will.
That's harsh. That's what she said, and she said it based on the idea of, you know, you should be writing this all yourself, etc. And I get all of that because you know, I don't think anyone should be using AI to write their books. But for marketing and things like that, I mean, technology is moving forward so quickly. So I'm trying to get my head around. You type certain ideas in about what can I do here, and it will suddenly come up with a breakdown of you can do this. But I want to use something visual. Now, I don't have millions of pounds to bring this out as a film. but AI will generate, small snippets of things.
Yeah, you see like book trailers. And that sort of thing.
So that's where I'm going down. So me and my fiance sort of in marketing.
Yeah.
So we're putting together a plan, and next month I'm going to try and kind of get the ball rolling on that. And the only reason I haven't got it rolling properly already is because I was still working last term and things were happening there. But I think I would suggest that's the way things are going to go. Social media, though, that side of things I find quite hard. I mean, I've got a TikTok account, but I'll be honest, sometimes I feel like a fraud. Like I feel too old for TikTok, and people talk about TikTok. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, and I feel like I'm in the way, but I'm going to keep getting in the way.
A lot of people have found success through TikTok.
They have.
Some of them will say they found it accidentally. They've not been sure what they've been doing and had a go, and then one post has gone viral, and then that's enough then to sell lots of books.
And that's that thing. It's that kind of this is why I was like, if I can partner kind of the sort of digital ability of AI with my own posts, because at the moment I'm doing my own thing. So I'm like, sometimes I'll write a snippet of something, or I'll just write a little idea that comes to my head. I mean, one of the posts that kind of had the most success in terms of people looking at it and liking it was, I can't remember, it was very, very, very short. And it was just an idea I had of a couple standing underneath an avalanche that's coming their way, and they know they can't escape it.
Yeah.
And, but them just very calmly speaking to each other. One of them goes, I suppose this is it then. And everyone goes, I guess so. And they just hold hands, and it just kind of ends there. But for whatever reason, people like that. Whereas, you see other people like just turning books and all sorts. And it's those kind of things that you're trying to get to grips with. And it's, I suppose it's very different to what it was 20 years ago.
It's so much more visual, isn't it? And video seems to be the thing, which is so much harder to...
And we're looking at concentration spans as well. I mean, phones are designed, obviously, to be addictive. You're addicted to flicking because of that kind of like dopamine release. And you're kind of going, well, being a teacher, I get to see children kind of make judgments on what they're like and what my class was like, say, 12 years ago to what it's like today. And the thing I've noticed is the attention span is so much shorter.
Oh, really?
So much shorter.
Because they've been given like tablets at home.
Technology has just exploded. Well, I just say exploded, like things weren't happening beforehand, like we're in the dark ages. But, that technology that's in your hands has exploded in the last 12 years in particular. The number of my class where I'm teaching, some 9-year-olds, and they've got smartphones. And I said, well, why do you need a smartphone? Oh, well, to phone my parents on the way home from school, if I'm walking from school. I'm like, do you need a smartphone for that? And they're like, why wouldn't I? But, they're flicking through things, the amount of access they have to things. But, I mean, the scary thing is I realised that the first class I taught, now they were 9-10 years old when I taught them, and they're now 23. But I think about kind of what they were like, what they're like now, and it is different. People do move quicker, so you've got to work harder to grab someone's attention. Or you've got to really make sure you know who your audience are and try and tap into these pools that are going to read your work and put something out there, and just, I suppose, be really honest about this is what it is. And if you like it, great. And if it's not your cup of tea, that's okay as well, because... we had Rachel McLean in, who's a self-published, really successful crime writer. And she was talking about covers, and she was saying you don't want your cover to stand out. You want your cover to look the same as other detective stories. People know what they like, and they know what it looks like. And they're just, if you try and deceive people as to what it is, they'll be onto you, and then you're knackered. I was going to say, there's a lot of murder mysteries out at the moment, I've noticed, with similar covers. And again, so Tom Hindle's kind of gone through this kind of Art Deco kind of cover. And my fiance was saying, I saw a book in the shop the other day, and I thought it was one of Tom Hindle's, and it wasn't.
Oh, right.
It was but it was a murder mystery, and again, it kind of fits in with that. Keep everything roughly the same, and but with this, I said to you earlier, I based it off the book The Sisters Brothers, which is a Western, so completely different. But I thought it stood out. I quite like it, and but it's still got, I mean, almost elements. I suppose Jurassic Park. You've got obviously the
It's
T-Rex,
got like the icon.
Yeah, so it's still, there's some sort of similarities there, whilst keeping it kind of blocked and basic.
Yeah.
But I quite liked it when they first actually did it. They put a saber-toothed tiger on the front, and I had to be repicking. Said, "Oh, it's actually a cave lion." But I quite liked the design. I was like, "Can we just shave its teeth down?" It's like, so we did. We just just ground its teeth down until it looked acceptable. Is
the next project? Are you sort of looking at book 2 for this?
Again, this is where I'm torn. There's part of me that goes, because I've got this murder mystery, which I quite like. I might push through with that, and then I spoke to the publisher, and they said, write something that you're quite enjoying, because that'll probably do better.
Yeah.
So I'm torn, if I'm honest.
It's hard, isn't it? Because you've got to bear in mind algorithms and things on Amazon. And all that.
Exactly.
I've listened to podcasts where people have said, if you if you use the same name for different kind of genres, Amazon will go crazy. But then other people have said the rules have changed recently, so it doesn't really apply anymore. So it's hard to know. Yeah,
there's always tiny little updates, like you said, the way that they program things, because they're always tweaking. And my brother works with computing. He does. He's had to do a lot of coding and things, and he works for, I suppose it's almost like a company that do stuff for insurance companies.
Oh, right.
So he might do, if you've got an insurance claim, you might have to go through a website. He might put together the video for the website, the set of instructions for the website. Okay. And he's worked for some pretty major companies. And one of them, this was over COVID, was saying, can we do this thing instead? And he'd written like all the code, and he said, it doesn't work like that. He says, I don't just put it in, I have to just get rid of all of that and start again from that point. But I suppose when people are doing things on Amazon, algorithms for books, they're going, what little tweak is going to make the biggest difference as you fire off? But yeah, it's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
No easy answer.
Does anybody have any questions at all? I'm conscious we've come up to 6:30.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right. It's my fault. If anybody's got any questions at all.
You talked earlier about Stephen King and the baby and the doll.
Yes.
And I suppose there's an ethical slant to this. Have you prepared yourself for questions that you might get on an ethical basis?
I haven't massively, if I'm honest. And I suppose a lot of that reflects kind of who I am. I mean, I feel like I'd be an amazing teacher if it was the 1980s and I could just rock into class. I've got so many things I want to teach them. I've got my own ideas and I suppose my own thoughts on things. But I always think on ethical issues and anything, it's good not to be closed-minded. And I'm not. So I'm always open to listening to somebody else's point of view. And sometimes you suddenly hear something and you go, oh, I've not considered that before. And it might not change your view completely, but it's enough for you to go, okay, there's another side that I've not seen. Interestingly, I mentioned about the mammoths, and obviously that brings into all sorts of ethical debates. And one of them that has come up to this company that I was reading about was, if you've got this technology, why are you wasting it on trying to bring back an animal that couldn't survive? Why are you not using it on modern day problems where it's helping people with their health, all sorts? And the company kind of saying, well, we probably will. We will probably do both. Yeah. And then there's the environmental issues. And I didn't realize this. So they said bringing back mammoths could actually help slow climate change. And I went, that seems like quite a stretch. But apparently there's science behind it. Is when there were lots of mammoths walking around the Arctic tundra, and that's where they want to release the herd.
Right, when Scotland.
They were the kind of Siberia area, and they showed the area, but they said they compact the snow, so they press it down and compact it, and they said when they do that, it melts an awful lot slower. Now, I kind of took their word for it. I think that's fair, but in my head, I'm still going, how many mammoths would you need to compact all that snow? So, in short answer, no. But I've always got something kind of in my head, I suppose, and I'm always willing to listen to other people's points of view as well.
You said about the Monte Cristo book. Was it the series on TV coming?
Yeah, I've seen. Is it this week?
I think it's this week. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what it's got. I haven't read the book.
Oh, see.
Read the book after that.
Have you seen the film?
I've seen Monte Cristo somewhere.
Yeah.
There was a great one in the early 2000s.
I feel like,
Guy Pearce.
Yeah.
Oh, that was really good.
That was quite enjoyable. But again, it's that I quite liked Alexandre Dumas. Obviously, wrote the Three Musketeers as well, and that's one of my favourite books. And obviously, it's translated, and the fact that the word banter came up in the translation I had, at least, you just kind of go, there's certain books I've read where I go, they're writing this in the 1800s. You wonder how serious they're being. Do they know their audience? Are they writing for this to be fun? And the Three Musketeers, I get this, just three friends just kind of going off doing their own, and then they've got this young lad, somebody comes in, and they're just going on these adventures, and then I read the Man in the Iron Mask, and it was far more serious, and almost like we've spoken about here, where you don't know who's going to survive and who doesn't.
Yeah.
And there's this assumption that these characters are going to survive, and then they don't. And again, that was kind of a bit of a gut punch to me. I was like, oh no. But yeah, no, I'll have to give that a look. That'll definitely be right up my street.
Sorry, I
No, that's
have
right.
a question.
Yeah, of course.
Go for it.
You said that you're always trying to improve your writing. Do you look at other authors? Do you learn a lot from others?
Yeah.
With the intention of learning?
Yes. Sometimes, obviously, there's a book that I'll read just because I want to read it. But like I mentioned, Richard Osman, and I read his book just out of curiosity. Originally, I read his first Thursday Murder Club book just because of who he was. And I thought, he seems a likeable guy. He's quite intelligent.
Yeah.
What's he going to write like? And as it turns out, really well.
Yeah.
But like I said, he's really good at dialogue and you getting a feel for the character and who they are. And I'd love to be able to do that. Sometimes I read Stephen King, and Stephen King wrote a really good book on writing. And I actually think that's oddly one of his best books that I've read. And he was talking about description, and I always worry that that's something I don't do that well, because I want to get into the action. I want to move the story forward.
Yeah.
I don't care what colour the walls are.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember with A-levels reading North and South, I think it was Elizabeth Gaskell, and I feel like she spent 2 or 3 pages describing a cup of tea, and I was like, I don't care. But I've read Charles Dickens as well. Like, sometimes you read really old books to go, well, what did they do? And you kind of go, but these were amazing books, and they still sell. But you kind of wonder if that was brought out today with a modern author, there's no way it would sell.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do. There's certain elements where I go, how can I move that? Nick Hornby again, he's really good with dialogue. And then there's other writers who really short, sharp, fast sentences where they're just, they cut the fat and it's just moving. So I try to read some of that just because naturally I'm waffly. And, people don't want that.
I'm going to rush off, but I'd like to take a coffee.
Yeah.
We should probably wrap up now anyway, as it's 22.
So I'll answer your question very quickly. Sorry.
Do you? I'm not a writer, but do you write a book that you like to read? Or you like some audience that you possibly
Do you know what? It's a weird one. I think I write the story I want to write, which sounds a bit horrible, a bit cheesy, but I don't know if I'd like I would like to read. I suppose I do. I write something that I would read myself. So yeah, but I don't think of it in that way, because I suppose the Civil War book. I'd love to read a Civil War book. I feel like no one's really written something that I'd want to read in that regard. So that's one of them. But something like the kind of the murder mystery that I said I wrote because I thought it was funny. I quite enjoyed the characters, so I wrote it because I wanted to write it. Yeah. Sorry. Should we?
Yeah. Thank you very much. That
Thank
was
you.
honestly brilliant, and
I enjoyed that.
absolutely loved the book. I thought it was amazing, and when you got book 2 out, whether it's the murder mystery or book 2 of this, we'll give you a shout and
Amazing.
you're more than welcome to come back.
Well, I've enjoyed being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.